that's going to take some time, so why don't we?
Sure. And there's a little bit of reading, as there always is. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, welcome to our meeting. Notice is hereby given of the regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Town of Westfield in the County of Union, New Jersey at 6 p.m. on the evening of Tuesday, March 16th, 2021. The board meeting will be held via an online platform which can be accessed at the board tab on the district website. The meeting can also be accessed by phone at 1-415-655-0001, access code 120-572-9209. The purpose of the meeting is to transact the regular business of the board and any other business to come properly before the board. The board will move immediately into private session to discuss matters rendered confidential by state and federal law, including personnel and legal matters. The public portion of the meeting will resume at 7 p.m. This is to advise the general public and to instruct that it be recorded in the minutes that in compliance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, entitled the Open Public Meetings Act, the Westfield School Board on Thursday, March 11th, 2021, caused to be posted at the office of the Board of Education located at 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey, and delivered to the Westfield Leader, the Star Ledger, the Westfield Library, Town Clerk of Westfield, Tap into Westfield, and Patch.com, a meeting notice setting forth the time, date, and location of this meeting. Members of the public will be allowed to make public comments twice during the virtual meeting. In the beginning of the meeting, the public may comment on agenda items only, and at the end of the meeting, the public can comment on any topic. At the appropriate time on the agenda, the Q&A window will be opened for public access. If you wish to address the board, please type in your name and address. Individuals who are calling into the meeting and wish to speak can touch *3 to access the raise your hand function, which will notify a staff member that you want to speak. When your name is called, a staff member will unmute your microphone. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Please note that if any member of the public becomes disruptive during the remote meeting, the board president may mute the speaker's microphone. Continued disruptions may result in removal from the virtual meeting. Dana, can we have a roll call, please?
Sahar Aziz.
Here.
Mike Beelan.
Here.
Brendan Galligan. Rob Garrison. Layla Morelli. Gretchen Oleg. Tara Porto.
Here.
Sonal Patel.
Here.
Amy Root.
Here. All right. Let's see. Tara, would you mind leading us in the flag salute, please?
Sure. I don't.
Okay.
We don't have. Who has the flag? Oh, because
I have one. Oh, we have a couple. There we go.
Pledge allegiance to the flag,
To the flag
United
of
States
the
of
States of America,
and to the
to the
republic
republic
for
Which
which it
stands
stands,
one
one
nation,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice.
and justice for all. Great. Thank you. All right, let's see. I would like the board to approve the following resolution. Be it resolved that the Board of Education move into private session for the purpose of discussing matters rendered confidential by state and federal law, including personnel and legal matters, and be it further resolved that any discussion held by the board which need not remain confidential, and the results of the discussion will be made public as soon as practicable. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Oh, that was a lot. Okay. I think I saw Brendan's hand first. It sounds like we're all in favor, please. Aye. Okay. Yes. All right. We'll move into private session on the other link and see you all back in public at 7. Thank you. We should go ahead and get started. Sorry to the members of the public. Our private session ran longer than we expected. And we have a couple board members that are joining us as we go. But we should probably go ahead and begin with announcements, right? Dana, announcements? Okay, great. Sahar, are you ready? I see you're muted. You would have the first announcement if you're ready.
Yes, I'm ready. I'm very excited about this announcement. So first, happy Women's History Month, everyone. On Monday, March 22nd at 7:30 p.m., the Temple Emmanuel of Westfield is hosting a live stream presentation of Brian Stevenson, author of Just Mercy and founder of the Equal Justice Initiative. Mr. Stevenson will discuss racial injustice as experienced by his representation of capital defendants and death row prisoners since 1989. More information about the event, including the link to register, is provided at tewnj.org/Brian Stevenson. That's BRYANSTEVENSON / There's no admission cost, and I would just be remiss to say that Brian Stevenson is a internationally well-known lawyer, so we are very lucky to have him joining us. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Sahar. Mike, I believe you have two tonight. Is that right?
I have two this evening, correct. So the first one, the Westfield High School PTSO is holding a clothing drive on Saturday, April 17th from 7:30 a.m. It doesn't say the end time on here, it just says PM, but starting at 7:30 a.m. to support the WHS class of 2021. For a list of items that can be dropped off at the WHS parking lot at 550 Dorian Road, visit the community flyers page of the Westfield website at www.westfieldnjk12.org and scroll down to the PTO initiative section. And the second announcement is save the date. Imagine a Center for Coping with Loss will host a free virtual version of its annual Greta's Run on Sunday, May 16th. More information on how to register can be found at, and the address is imaginenj.org/Greta's Run. And that's just, I'll spell it MIMAGINENJ.org/GRETASRUN. Thank you very much.
Tremendous. All right, great. I'm sorry, I lost my alphabetical list. Let's see. Rob, do you have an announcement tonight? You have no Rob. We'll skip over Rob for the moment. Layla, could you read yours, please?
Sure. The PTC Special Education Committee, in partnership with the Westfield Public Schools Department of Special Services, is hosting an hour-long virtual workshop focusing on mental health essentials for parents and caregivers on Wednesday, April 7th, 2021 at 7:30 p.m. The Caring for the Caregiver program is free and all parents, teachers, therapists are invited to attend. Pre-registration is not required. More information, including the webinar link and a participant's guide, can be found on the community flyers page under Family Resources on the district and school websites. Email westfieldspecialedparents@gmail.com with any questions.
Great. Thank you very much. Rob, we had to skip over you briefly. Are you able to pick up with your
Yes,
announcement now, please?
sorry for
Great,
I
thanks.
wasn't able to get on. Yes. So I have one official announcement, and I wanted to make another announcement, which I'll do first. Is this is known as Sunshine Week around the country, and I wanted to recognize former Senator Byron Baer, who is one of the most tremendous elected officials that have ever been in the state of New Jersey. He is known as the father of the Open Public Meetings Act. He was a freedom rider back in the 60s. Unfortunately, passed away a number of years ago, but I did want to recognize Byron since it is Sunshine Week, and he is the father of the Sunshine Law in the state of New Jersey. My official announcement is Wednesday, April 14th is the deadline to submit nominations for the 2021 Charles Fillhauer Fellowship Award. The award was established in 1993 by the Rotary Club of Westfield to recognize an outstanding full-time elementary teacher in the Westfield Public Schools and to honor the late Westfield Rotarian and former school superintendent Charles Fillhauer. Nominations should specify ways in which the teacher has demonstrated outstanding teaching, interest in children, and continued pursuit of professional growth. The teacher must be a full-time faculty member in grades K through 5 in the Westfield Public Schools for a minimum of 5 years. Send a letter stating how your nominee meets the criteria to the Charles Fillhauer Fellowship Committee of the Rotary Club of Westfield, care of Superintendent of Schools, 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey, 07090, or you can email it to Rotary Fillhauer, which is ROTARYPHILHOWER at westfieldnjk12.org. A list of past Fillhauer Award recipients can be found on the district and school websites under recent news. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Tara, you have one to read tonight too?
I do. And this is a good one, so everybody pay attention. Reading.
Come on, they're all good. Come on, they're all good.
They are. I'm excited about this one, though. Reading Buddies is a new program sponsored by the Westfield High School Community Service Club and the Friends of the Westfield Memorial Library in partnership with the Youth Services Department at the library. It is a one-to-one virtual reading experience with each high school buddy paired with a student buddy to read a book together for 20 minutes. The sessions begin at 3:30 p.m. The first session was on March 9th, with 2 more scheduled for March 18th and March 23rd. Recommended for ages 5 to 10, Reading Buddies is a fun way to share a story and foster the love of reading. This virtual program is supported via Zoom, and students participate at home. To register your student, go to info@fwmlnj.org and include your student's name, age, school, parent, guardian name, and phone number. The Westfield High School Community Service Club members are looking forward to reading to their new buddies.
All right, you're right. That was pretty cool. Okay. Sonal, you're up next.
Okay, 3 Westfield High School students will perform in the New Jersey State Solo Ensemble Festival in April, an inaugural virtual event launched by Arts Ed New Jersey for the 2020-2021 school year to recognize student achievement in music education across the state. Congratulations to 11th graders Connor Daly, trombone, Nate Oberstein, percussion, and Matthew Robinson, alto saxophone, who advanced to the state festival after submitting video performances to a regional festival in February. Over 1,000 students participated in the regional festival, which was adjudicated by highly skilled judges. Each student performance received a ranking. Out of 30 total points, students who scored 28 points or higher advanced to the state finals. In announcing this important recognition, band director Christopher Vitale said, "We are extremely proud of the accomplishments of Nate, Matt, and Connor. This has been a challenging year for musicians to stay motivated without public performances. These students have gone above and beyond to push themselves to be better. They serve as an inspiration to all of us for how to navigate circumstances that may not be ideal."
Great, thank you. And let's see, Brendan, I think you have 2 tonight. Is that right?
That is correct. We'll start off with congratulations to Westfield High School 11th grader TJ Walsh, who's been elected to serve as treasurer for the New Jersey Association of Student Councils. TJ joins 8 other high school students from New Jersey to serve as 2021 state officers for the NJASC, which is the nation's oldest student leadership organization. The organization is dedicated to helping middle and high school student councils to be more active and engaged in their schools and communities. TJ began his involvement with student council in 6th grade, developing, in his words, quote, "a deep-rooted passion for public service and governance." At least 5 Westfield High School students have served previously as state officers for the NJASC, the most recent being in 2009. Congratulations, TJ. All Westfield public schools will be closed for spring break from Monday, March 29th through Friday, April 2nd. Additionally, as previously announced, schools will be closed on Monday, April 5th for an unused snow day. Also, as previously announced, students and staff will be on all remote learning from Tuesday, April 6th through Friday, April 9th, returning to in-person instruction on Monday, April 12th.
All right, thank you very kindly. And I have an announcement as well, which is that the next public meeting of the Westfield Board of Education will be held on Tuesday, April 6th. The meeting is expected to be held virtually and to begin at 7 p.m. Apologies again for tonight's late start. Instructions on how to access the virtual meeting can be found on the board tab at the district website at www.westfieldnjk12.org. The complete agenda will be available on Friday, March 26th, also under the board tab on the district website. A special meeting of the board will be held on Monday, March 22nd at 7 p.m. The board will move immediately into private session to discuss the search for a new superintendent. The board does not intend to take action at this meeting, and there will be no public comment on the agenda. All right, moving right along with tonight's meeting then. We are at the point where we will recognize the public for comment on agenda items only. If you see something on the agenda and wish to make a public comment, we're opening the Q&A tab. Please type in your name and address, and then your microphone will be unmuted. If you have comments about something that is not an agenda item, there will be another opportunity for public comment later in the meeting. Okay. We'll give it a few seconds.
So Amy, while we wait, I'll give you a little background. So you are to thank Byron Bear for that long reading you have to do every meeting for the Open Public Meetings Act. And back in the day, they used to actually call it the Byron Bear Act, and most folks recognized him during that time. But since his name's been taken out, most folks don't appreciate the role that Byron played in the sunshine laws here in New Jersey.
Well, thank you for that tidbit. I had no idea, but yes, I'm becoming familiar with the pattern of the opening phraseology there. I'm not seeing anyone. Brian, are you seeing anyone?
No, I don't see anyone, Amy.
Okay, all right. Then since we got the late start, why don't we move along? We have a budget to talk about. Now is the superintendent's report. I will turn it over to Dr. Dolan. Dr. Dolan, if you could do the introducing of the next item, that would be great.
Yes, certainly. Thank you. So certainly a great deal of work, as you might imagine, goes into a preparation for a budget for the next year. And just as everything is a little bit more challenging this year, it's a little more challenging this year. But we have worked quite a bit on it. It's been reviewed with the Finance Committee of the board, and the board has received some information. And tonight, Dana Sullivan is going to share a presentation to present the basics of the proposed budget for next year.
Thank you. Brian, can you? Well, there's a sign of the times. Next one, Brian. So, of course, we start with goals for the year, and that's what we use as our basis for building our budget. So back in December, the board had a meeting where we talked about the direction that the board wanted to see the 21-22 budget go in. And some of the guidelines that you set for us were to continue to maintain our class sizes within our policy guidelines, to maintain funding for recently approved courses, to continue our funding for the school resource officers. We currently have 3 of them. And actually the town also contributes towards that cost. To maintain our fund balance at the 2% level. 2% level is something that could be changed soon. It's a 4% temporarily, but right now it's 2%. To stay within the 2% tax levy cap plus eligible wage waivers. To continue to assess the one-to-one Chromebook initiative that we put into place this year for COVID. Of course, to ensure compliance with CDC and DOE guidelines for next year. And to determine if reallocation of funds is possible as a result of the remote learning and some of the changes that we've made this year. Next slide, please, Brian. So just as a reminder what the calendar is, back in November, the business office distributed forms to all of the schools and all of the department heads with budget information and asked them to submit back to us their requests for the following school year. In December, as I mentioned before, the board had a meeting and set the direction for the goals for the budget. And then from that time, from December through February, the superintendent and I have met with every principal in the district as well as every department head to review the budget requests and develop the school district budget for next year. At our February 23rd meeting, we talked preliminarily about the budget, but we didn't have state aid figures at that time. So of course, that's a big part of our budget. So we didn't get into detail, but we talked about the budget and where we were at that time. 2 days later, we did receive state aid. So tonight we are presenting you a budget with state aid information in there and all the other information that we received from the state at that date. We're asking you to adopt the tentative budget this evening, which will be submitted to the county office this week. It is actually due to them on Monday. We will advertise the budget in the paper on April 22nd. The reason for that lag time is we are not allowed to advertise until the county office reviews and approves the budget, and they have a month to do that. So we will advertise on April 22nd, and then we'll hold a public hearing on April 27th, and we'll adopt the final budget at that time. Next slide, please, Brian. So of course, the first thing we look at when we develop our budget is enrollment, and look at our current enrollment and project out enrollment for the following year. So as you can see, in the last 20 years, we've had a significant increase in our enrollment. However, it's been steady for the last 10 or so years. We did have a little dip this year, partially due to COVID, we believe. Our estimates for next year are that it's probably going to increase a little bit to last year's level. We did have a demographic study done a couple of years ago, as you'll recall, and the forecast was for our enrollment to remain relatively stable, and that is what we've been seeing happen. So, and this chart just shows you that, the history of the enrollment. The revenue for the operating budget. So the total operating budget for next year is projected at $127 million. The largest piece of that, 94%, well, it's not 94% with the reserve accounts in there, so that's a little misleading. But this total revenue slide that I'm showing you here includes the transfers to reserve accounts at budget time, and also the transfers out of reserve accounts that we estimate that we're going to make next year. So that's the $12 million figure there. The local tax levy is the largest part of our revenue. That is, there reflects a 2% increase from from the current school year. And that's the maximum we're allowed to submit. So 2%, we are at the 2% cap with that increase. State aid, as I mentioned last time, did increase by $1 million. So we've reflected that state aid increase here. Special ed Medicaid is federal money that we receive for students that are eligible for Medicaid, and that receive certain services in the district, and we do get reimbursed from the federal government for that. We do continue to use fund balance as a revenue. You'll recall we've been using $750,000 for the last number of years. In the 2021 year, we actually increased that in July from 750, which was the original amount that we budgeted. We had to appropriate another $494,000 when we lost state aid in July. So that was because of the pandemic. We received revised state aid numbers. And at that point, we decided, rather than cutting the budget after we had already started the fiscal year, and after, of course, we already hired all of our staff, that we would appropriate additional money from surplus for that school year. So for next year, we're bringing that back down to the $750,000 level. Other revenue, most of that is interest income that we receive. We also receive student activity fees for middle and high school. And then we have some building rental fees that we anticipate for next year, as well as some miscellaneous revenue. In the 2021 budget reflects purchase orders that were rolled over at the end of the prior year and then increased the budget on July 1st. That's zero for next year because we don't yet have anything from this school year that is final. Fund balance transferred to reserve accounts. In last year's budget, we deposited $1.2 million into reserve accounts, and in this year's budget, we're anticipating $1.3 million into the maintenance and capital reserve account. And in this budget, we are projecting to use $12 million for capital projects. Most of those would be HVAC projects. And actually, at the next board meeting, we're going to do a capital budget presentation, so you'll see more information about that. You're actually not formally approving this in tonight's budget, but it is added into the legal budget document, which is why I added into this slide, so that if you look at the legal document, you will see that the numbers agree. But those you actually approve as we approve contracts. We actually then approve the transfer out of the reserve account. But if we don't reflect it in the legal budget that gets submitted, then we can't do that. So that's why that's included in the legal budget document. Next slide, please. So state aid, again, for 2021 and 21-22, did go up $1,003,000 for special ed aid. Transportation and security stayed the same. Extraordinary aid is an estimate. we don't actually submit applications for that aid until the end of the school year. So for the 2021 school year, we'll be submitting an application probably in April. And we usually don't know until June or July what the actual amount of that aid is. So 975 is an estimate for both this year and next year at this point. And our debt service aid did go up by $4,539. So the state aid, although we are very happy to get $1 million more this year, and it certainly helped us to submit a budget that was at cap and maintain the programs that we have. If the formula were implemented the way the formula is written, we would actually see $7.3 million of aid. So again, we're happy that we did receive the aid that we got, but it's not quite at the level that it should be per the state formula. Next slide, Brian. And so here's a slide that shows you state aid back in 2009-10, when we had $4.6 million in state aid. And then the following year, the state had a huge deficit, made very large reductions to state aid across the board to all the school districts. So you can see that year we lost a tremendous amount. And then for the next couple of years, it was still significant. But I show you this slide to say that the 5.5 million is, not only is it much less than what the formula shows us, if we had just been receiving the same state aid as 2009 school year, we would have had $18 million more in state aid than we currently do. So that's a big, big impact on the district and on our budget. Next slide, please. So again, the sources of revenue, this slide is where the local tax levy is 94% of the budget, because I don't have any of the reserve accounts included in here. This is just our operating budget and what we use to pay for all of our expenses. So 94% of the budget is coming from the local tax levy. The tuition, student activity fees, and miscellaneous that I mentioned before is $553,000. Interest is about $500,000. And then the extraordinary and state aid is about $6.5 million. And the fund balance is $750,000, as I mentioned earlier. Next slide, please, Brian. So how the operating budget is spent, about 80% of our budget goes for salaries and benefits. That's common in school districts. We are a very labor-intensive industry, so most of our costs are on staff. We also spend another 3% on outside providers for OT, PT, and some legal assistance. And you can see small percentages on cleaning, repair, and maintenance, and supplies, materials, and equipment, which is why having the money that we do in our maintenance and capital project reserve accounts are so important, because our school buildings, which are 70 years old or more, we actually use that money to maintain our buildings, because a very small part of our operating budget can go to that cost. Transportation and insurances is about 6% of our budget. And out-of-district tuition, which is for our neediest special ed students, is about 7% of our budget. Next. And of our staffing, so the 80% of our budget that we spend on staff, salary and benefits for staff, as you can see, most of that is on teachers or special ed teachers and paraprofessionals. So those are people that are directly working in the classroom with students. Another 6.7% is for nurses, guidance counselors, and librarians. So again, staff that work directly with students on a daily basis. Our principals, supervisors, and school secretaries that work in the buildings make up another 6% of the budget. Operations, which would largely be about central office staff and support staff, is 3%, 3.5%, and our maintenance and custodial staff is 7.3% of the budget. Next slide, please. So looking at the 2021 budget compared to the 2022 budget and the increases in the budget, or the changes in the budget from this year to next year, of course, salaries is the largest increase, because, as I said before, that's 80% of our budget. So the estimated increase in salaries is about 1.7%. Special ed costs, we're projecting about a $913,000 increase. We're expecting an increase in transportation of about $82,000. Our increase in pension contributions is about $156,000. Surprisingly, our health insurance we're projecting will decrease for next year. As most of you will recall, we do have a self-insured plan, so we don't have a flat fee that we pay to the insurance company. We pay as people use healthcare and go to doctors. But our brokers are estimating that next year we may actually decrease in that account. So that's what we've budgeted. And then all other areas of the budget were decreased by $250,000. So our total budget increase is $2.5 million. So at the February 23rd meeting, at that point, we talked about a preliminary budget, and I estimated that we would be could possibly be $3.4 million or so over cap. Thankfully, that did not happen. So the first thing that happened was we got state aid information, and we actually got another $1 million in state aid. So that immediately brought that number down. And the next thing we did is get updated information from our health insurance brokers. Our initial estimate from our brokers was that we would have to budget for an 8% increase in our health insurance costs. After they got updated information on what our costs were for the last couple of months of the year, they were able to revise those estimates to a decrease, as I mentioned previously. So rather than being 3.4 million over cap, we were only 861,000 over cap. So we went back to the draft budget and looked to see where we could make changes to that budget. We believe at this point we can reduce 3 staff members due to our enrollment, and that would save the district $220,000. We did have money in the budget next year to purchase additional textbooks for new curriculum. We actually moved those purchases up this year with some money that we are saving from health insurance in this current year. So we just moved those purchases sooner rather than waiting till next year. Same with some of this technology. Some of the technology costs that were in the budget were things that we determined could wait. And then there were other things that we determined we could purchase this year. So we actually did that and reduced it out of next year's budget. And we had budgeted a substantial increase in our daily sub rate because we think other districts are doing that, and we think we may have to do that to be competitive. But it was very expensive, so we actually reduced that back to the current rate, and we're hoping that we can continue to be able to get subs at our current rate. So with those reductions, we are now at the state tax levy cap of 2% increase. So our budget is at that cap. And we do continue to maintain all the programs and services that we currently have in the district. Next slide, please, Brian. So although the tax levy is going up 2%, the tax increase, and this is just school tax that I'm talking about, the school tax rate increase is actually only 1.66%, and that's because the ratables in town went up. So a 2% tax levy increase translates to a 1.6% increase in the school tax rate. So that's a good thing. And the average homeowner with an average assessed house will see an increase in school taxes of about $170 for next year. Next slide, please. And I showed this slide also last time, and I think it's just important to remember this and to see this again, that our cost per pupil to other similar K-12 districts, similar sized K-12 districts, Westfield is at the bottom of the spending line there. So when we talk about the tax levy increase and the fact that we can only increase 2%, we're increasing our 2% tax levy off a much lower base than many other districts are increasing. So which gives us a lot less room to make adjustments in our budget. And when the tax levy cap went in, there was no adjustment for districts that were low spending versus high spending. So wherever you were at that time is where you started counting 2%. So if you were in a higher spending district at the time, you were in better shape than the lower spending districts. Next slide, please. So although very low spending, we're at the opposite end on how much we spend on instruction. So we're way to the left on spending, but we're way to the right on one of the highest districts on the amount of our budget that is spent actually in the classroom and on instruction. And these are calculations that come directly from the state of New Jersey. They take audited information that they get from every school district and do these calculations and make them available so that they're comparable from district to district. So although we're low spending, we're spending the money in the right spot in school. Next slide, please, Brian. So that concludes our presentation for this evening. The board, you on Friday had the legal budget document as well as a detailed budget document. So any questions that anybody has on the budget that I can answer for you tonight before you approve? Brendan?
Hey, Dana, if you could explain that last chart in particular, what does the state count towards instruction, and what do they exclude from that calculation? I know we're towards the high end for almost 60% of our, or around 60% of our dollars going to the classroom or instruction, but what does instruction mean?
So instruction would be teachers' salaries, instructional supplies, anything that's directly related to the classroom. So it would be special ed teachers, anything directly related to the classroom.
Okay, but not the classroom. If we did an improvement in a classroom, that obviously wouldn't count.
If we did what?
An improvement to one of the classrooms, whether it's
No,
new technology.
no, not capital projects, right? No, not capital projects. So all of the total cost per pupil, they would not count that in that any of the capital project costs. They don't count in that any out of district tuition costs or out of district transportation costs, because those are costs that they don't think are comparable from district to district because it's based on individual student needs. So that would not be in any of that per pupil cost. And instruction, instruction would be nothing as far as the building. It wouldn't be maintaining the buildings or doing anything like that. It's just purely teachers, librarians, nurses, people that are directly in the classroom.
So personnel, not textbooks or technology or any.
No, that's in there too.
Okay, so technology is
Any type, if it's instructional technology, like depending on if we buy a laptop for a secretary, that wouldn't be instructional. If we buy a laptop for a teacher, that would be instructional.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Sahar?
Yes, thank you, Dana. First, I want to thank you for that detailed report, and thank you for taking time to explain the budget to me as somebody who's new to the board, so I really appreciate it. And I just want to note that we have 69 participants for those who were on, so thank you to all Westfield residents for attending. So I have just two questions, and mainly clarification questions for our residents. So the first is when we think about professional development for teachers, because education, as you said, is labor intensive, and there's always new developments in pedagogy and technology, et cetera. Is that in the 80% portion of teacher salaries and benefits, or where are we budgeting for teacher professional development?
No, that would be what's called purchase professional services. So it's in another part of the budget. It's not in the 80%. The 80% is strictly for salaries and for health and health, dental, and prescription benefits.
So I guess in your pie chart that you had, what was 80% and that was broken up, which bucket is that in?
Yeah, hold on, I have to look at my pie chart.
Sahar, could you hold your microphone closer to your mouth? You keep cutting in and out.
I just got to go back to my. It's in the, there's outside providers, behaviorists, OT, PT, and legal. It would be in there. It's considered an outside provider.
And then are you at liberty, and again, if you're not, please let me know, to tell the public in terms of money that we have that is surplus? I don't know if that's the right term to use. In terms of, for example, when you said we were spending from 2 million to 12 million for reserve accounts. How did we get to 12? How do we have that extra $10 million to be able to put into our infrastructure? Because I think that's, good news, but it might be helpful for the public to understand how that works in light of the 2% cap that we have operating.
Sure. So we can't budget in New Jersey. We cannot have a deficit. So we budget revenues and expenditures. But we can't ever have more expenditures than we have revenues. So we're always going to have some kind of fund balance because we're always going to have more revenue than expenditures at the end of the year. A number of years ago, maybe 2013, 14, we made the decision in the district to move from a fully insured health insurance and prescription insurance plan to a self-insured plan. And that enabled us to save millions of dollars. So what happens is that first year, I believe it was maybe $4.5–5 million. So the money that we didn't spend on that, we put right into reserve accounts. We're kind of constrained. We are constrained on what we can do with that money. We can hold 2% of it in an unreserved account that just sits there for an emergency. So we do have that. That's about $2.5 million. Anything else that we have left from that, we either have to use in the following year's budget or we put into reserve accounts. So we've been using $750,000 as revenue every year out of that money for the next year's budget as revenue, and the rest of it we put in the reserve accounts. So we've had good experience every year with our health insurance. So over the number of years since we've been health and self-insured, we've been able to put in a lot of money into those reserve accounts and then take them out again to use them for capital projects. So, because we do have to budget, you have to budget what you think you could spend on health insurance, because if the costs come in and you need to spend it, you need to have the money there. So you have to budget appropriately. And then if you don't need it, you're able to put it into the reserve accounts and then use it for capital projects. So that's what we've been doing, and that's why we've been able to do that.
Yeah, and Dana, may I add too? I know you talk about this at most budget presentations, and maybe you'll include this on the second reading of it or the second time we talk about it. But another good reason to have those reserve accounts, especially in the capital, is that it's a very fiscally smart way of dealing with capital improvements, as opposed to having to go out to bond every time there might be major capital needs. And usually if you have major capital needs, that means that usually something is wrong or it's part of a long-term planning process. And by having these monies in a reserve, you're able to really deal with things as they come along, as opposed to holding things and pushing things off and off and off until maybe they become a bigger issue between the maintenance account and the construction capital dollars as well.
Right.
Thank you. Just one final point. So first, I just want to say, on the record, that we're very lucky to have you, Dana.
Thank you.
I'm very impressed with the budget, and for, at least from my non-expert opinion, we seem to be in quite good fiscal health. And so I guess just the last point, and it's somewhat of a point, maybe a question, but is that we do have some buffer in terms of having some flexibility of expanding our curricular programs, to the extent that our teachers, our superintendent, our principals see that we could, what's the right word, improve or be at the cutting edge, right, of curricular projects or other educational academic focused projects. And it sounds like we do have some reasonable buffer to be able to strategize. And I know the board is going to do some strategic planning in the fall, but I just thought that was good news, and I think our residents should know. Thanks for your fiscal shepherding.
Thank you.
Sorry. It's worth noting that back in 2012, the district went out to bond over a number of projects, including replacing the roofs at the high school, well, all the district schools. And the voters shot it down. And they said, you guys should be saving money towards things with known lifespans, so that we don't have to keep going out and bonding for what many would consider, routine but large maintenance projects. And we listened, and we've been able to put money aside every year. When I first got on the board, we had $600 and something in our reserve accounts. And
$869.
thanks to Dana's leadership, we've gotten in a much stronger fiscal health. And we're able to do projects like air conditioning projects or the ventilation projects for the elementary schools this year without having to go out and ask the voters for additional revenue.
Yeah, and that is one of the hardest parts as you become a board member and you start to learn how the budget works, is that difference between the operating budget and the capital funds and the fund balances that we have. And there's so many rules from the state about how you can spend certain types of money. So, so having the funds that we can use on capital projects is really good, but unfortunately, we can't just take from there and create more teachers necessarily, or that kind of a thing. So we're lucky to have Dana as a guide to help explain for us, you know, how that works and to help make many things possible, but unfortunately not everything is possible, but definitely something to keep in mind as we head into the fall with our next strategic plan. You're right, absolutely.
And those strict rules from the state yeah, those strict rules from the state are good rules. They keep us and everybody honest. And it'd be nice if the legislature followed their own rules that they impose on us.
Amy, if I can, just Dana, thank you. I know we had our finance committee meeting last week, and I appreciate you going over all the info then and then also here. And I just wanted to bring up a point. You don't really have to comment if you don't want to, but I did want to bring, you know, the First Lady was in New Jersey yesterday talking about some of the rescue plan monies that are coming into the state. You do not know how that's going to impact our budget for next year, nor is that factored into this budget, correct?
That's correct. Some of it we were notified last week or 2 weeks ago of ESSER 2 money that's coming in. But we don't yet know. The application was just opened up yesterday, so we just were able to access to see kind of what the money is supposed to be used for. That is not reflected in this budget at all. That will be submitted to the state as an application, and we'll get approval on that after we submit it. We're looking at our needs in the district of where we can spend that money appropriately. I'm told the next round is going to be $1 million or more. I don't know. And maybe something that we can use for over a couple of years, which, because normally with grant money, you don't want to add staff because you're adding it for 1 year and then you're reducing it again. But if this is something that we get and we can use for a couple of years, then we may want to add staff for a couple of years. If it's something that we think will be helpful for us, you know, if we can target an area that we think we only have a couple of years need, or something maybe down the line we can move into our operating budget. But yeah, we're still talking about that. We don't have answers for that, but we do definitely know more money is coming.
Great. Okay. Any other questions or comments about the budget at this point? I think we're going to vote on it during the finance portion. Is that right, Dana?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dana. Thanks very much. All right, let's move along. I would like the board to approve the minutes of the board meeting held on March 2nd, 2021, and the private minutes of March 2nd, 2021. Can I have a second? Thank you, Mike. Saw your hand first. Sorry, it's just a yes or no vote, right, Dana? Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes? Say aye, raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Any abstaining? Any abstentions or no's? No. Okay, good. All right then. Moving along, I would like the board to consider personnel items 1 through 15. Could I have a second?
Second.
I think I saw Brendan first. Thank you, Brendan. Dr. Dolan, I believe you have, unfortunately, a few comments to make here on this section. Is that right?
I do. Somewhat unusual for us because tonight I am announcing the retirements of 8 staff members who have given a total of 130 years of service to Westfield students. And each one of them deserves our attention because they are retiring. So Norma Nemec has been a paraprofessional at Jefferson and Lincoln for the last 10 years. Her calm, steady, and positive presence is a powerful source of support for her students. For 14 years, Nancy Keeler has worked as a paraprofessional at Franklin and more recently at the high school. It has always been her goal to work towards helping her students become more independent. Christine Falagi is often the first person to greet students entering the guidance and counseling office at Westfield High School. For the last 19 years, Christine has been a gracious and efficient support to the counselors and their students. Kathy Dibble. Kathy Dibble has been the anchor of the second grade program at Franklin School since 2008, after filling long-term substitute positions at Tamaulipas. An active member of the Franklin community and a member of the United Fund's after-school tutoring team, Kathy has a solid understanding of the educational, social, and emotional needs of primary level students. Scott Bunt. Scott Bunt is a special education teacher at the high school for the past 16 years and offers invaluable in-class support to the science department in the areas of earth science and environmental science. Scott has developed a strong rapport with the students, particularly with those in the high school's prep program. His warm rapport with high school students and his deep knowledge in the areas of science, and he supports them to design lessons that he's able to design lessons that use an effective, diverse mix of learning strategies and materials to reach each and every student. Mary Beth Harritz. Mary Beth Harritz is a highly professional, dedicated counselor who works daily to provide students at McKinley and Tamaulipas schools with the emotional support they need for personal and academic growth. Mary Beth joined Westfield staff in 2003, and she's used her knowledge and compassion to create learning experiences for students to give them important social skills needed for effective lifelong communication and positive interaction with others. For the last 19 years, Diane Mahatha has been a leader in the high school's reading instruction. As a member of the special education department, she has helped students who have struggled with the rudiments of literacy grow in skill and confidence as readers. Diane is a generous colleague who willingly goes the extra mile for others and shares her experience and knowledge with fellow staff members. Ileana Pizarro. Ileana currently serves as a learning disabilities teacher consultant at the high school. She has also supported students at Lincoln, Roosevelt, McKinley, Washington, and Wilson schools, and has served as a coordinator of child study teams. Since her arrival in 2001, Ileana has been a value and integral member of the related services team, whose conscientious and collaborative style supports both team members and students alike. So that is quite a group of professionals. We're very proud of all of them, and we wish all of them happy and healthy retirements going forward.
All right. Thank you for that. If there are no comments, we'll take a roll call, please.
Sahar Aziz,
Yes.
Mike Beelan,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Bob Garrison,
Yes.
Layla Morelli,
Yes.
Tara Porto,
Yes.
Sonal Patel,
Yes.
Amy Root.
Yes. All right. Thank you for that. Facilities, Mike, do you have a report for?
We haven't had a facilities meeting. We're having a facilities meeting this coming Friday, March 19th. The one update I do have is they are installing the plexiglass dividers in the various classrooms around the district. I don't know if you have an update, Dana, on what percentage were complete on that or whether we're fully complete.
So all from pre-K to grades 2 at the elementary level are all complete. The 3 to 5 will be completed before Monday. And all of the middle schools have been installed.
Okay. And that's the update for today. We'll have an update next meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Thanks, Mike. All right. I'm sorry that Gretchen is not here to tell us that long-range planning has a meeting scheduled. She has had no report for many a meeting, and it has been a little bit disappointing for her. But the long-range planning committee is also having a meeting on Friday, the 19th. So hopefully at our next meeting, there'll be a little bit more for Gretchen to tell us at that point. Policies. Brendan, anything tonight?
No action items tonight. The policy committee is meeting tomorrow at noon, and we'll have more to report after our next meeting.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. All right, moving along to curriculum. We did have our meeting on March 4th, and I would like the board to consider curriculum items. There are many, but they're all considered curriculum items number 1. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Brendan. At our meeting, we discussed a number of, I guess, 7 classes at the high school. 3 of them are mathematics workshop classes where students take those classes in tandem with other math classes in order to improve their skills and be ready to advance without the workshop support going forward. We also heard of 4 social studies classes, all of the US history options that sophomores, juniors, and occasionally seniors, since there's an AP history in there as well, take. All of those courses were revisions, as was an explanation of the full K-12 English as a second language program. Enrique Pinque, who's our supervisor for world languages, oversees that program as well. It was great to hear from him how things function there. So we have those 8 curricula for approval. Does anyone have any questions on those? Okay.
Amy?
Yep.
I don't have a
Yep.
question, but I just wanted to comment just for the benefit again of the public. I have the privilege of serving on the curriculum committee with you. I'm sorry. But I just wanted to say how impressed I was with everyone that was presenting to us, but in particular, the critical thinking skills that we teach our students. And just getting to hear kind of the amount of detail and the amount of effort that our teachers put in. And so I just think that as a parent and as people on the board and for our residents, that our students are getting that level of attention to their critical thinking skills, which is, as we know, very important in these times.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. I'm glad you feel the same way. I always say I think it's it's a marvelous committee to be able to serve on, to be able to interact with our teachers and our supervisors. So I'm glad you feel that way as well. That's great. All right. If there's no other comments, seeing none. Dana, a roll call?
Just one thing. I thought this was,
Yes,
I'm still a little confused on process. I thought this was first reading. Is this first reading?
I'm sorry, I didn't clarify. You're right.
Okay.
First reading of the attached 8 curricula. I'm sorry. Yes, and they'll be on the agenda at our next meeting as well.
So we vote on it both times?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
You ready for a vote? Sahar Aziz,
I think so.
Yes.
Mike Beelan,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Rob Garrison,
Yes.
Layla Morelli,
Yes.
Tara Porto,
I'm going to abstain from this one.
Sonal Patel,
Yes.
Amy Root.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Our next curriculum meeting will be April 8th. It's a Thursday. All right, let's see. All right, the big one, finance. Rob, you're up.
Thank you. The main report obviously is what Dana gave, and we do have items 1 through 14 that we're seeking approval for. Do I have a second? Michael? Second. I'll point out 2 things. One, obviously, is the first vote on the budget. And then, as we normally point out, item number 10, which is a gift of 2 new weatherproof basketball pole pads from Jefferson Elementary School parents to be used for the school's 2 main basketball hoops on Summit Avenue. And then number 11 is to accept a gift from the Optimist Club of Westfield for $6,200 to help fund the purchase of benches and tables for the Westfield High School Courtyard Project honoring Principal Dr. Derek Nelson. Dana, unless there's any comments, Dana, roll call.
Sahar Aziz,
Yes. Sorry. Yes.
Mike Beelan,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Rob Garrison,
Yes.
Layla Morelli,
Yes.
Tara Porto,
Yes.
Sonal Patel,
Yes.
Amy Root.
Yes.
And I cannot, for the life of me, remember when our next committee meeting is, but everyone will be notified via email beforehand.
Sounds good. Thank you. Technology, Gretchen did not provide a report, and unfortunately it was kind of a last minute absence on her part that she couldn't join us tonight. I don't think there's been a technology committee since our last meeting. Do you know, Brian?
No, we haven't had a meeting, Amy, but we do have one scheduled for next Friday, the 26th.
Correct. Yeah, I was going to say that. Yep.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Good. Okay. So for our next meeting, we'll hear more on that then. Okay. Great. Then I would like the board to consider the notes for the record. So noted. Do we have any unfinished business? Do we have any new business to discuss? No. Doing a quick scan. Okay. Liaison reports. I think we do have some of those. Yes? Anyone want to go first? Sonal, would you like to?
Sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, sure. I had the opportunity to meet with the Washington PTO parents last week. We had a really productive meeting. We went over some prearranged questions that they had sent me, as well as some discussion items that they were interested in reviewing, some of which I've forwarded to Dr. Dolan. And I'll continue to meet with them and talk with them going forward.
I can go.
Great.
I had a good
Okay.
meeting. I had a good meeting with the Lincoln PTO last week. We did talk for quite a bit of time, as Dr. Dolan knows, about how to get the pre-K and K back to their full half day. I just wanted to reiterate that it's really, really important that we do everything possible to try to figure that out. These kids are getting half of a half day right now. So if there's anything we haven't thought of or anything that we can do to try to figure out how to get them to a half day, it would be extremely helpful for those younger learners.
Yep, Layla?
I had the opportunity to meet with the executive session at Jefferson last week, and I have just my notes. Next week is community service week. And I just wanted to share that I thought that the Jefferson what they're partnering with, the charities that they're partnering with were, I thought, just fantastic. They're doing not the typical charities. They're doing Bonds of Courage, Volunteers of America, and Socket to Homelessness. And they are collecting within their own Jefferson community. And I know that all of the elementary schools are doing the same for Community Service Week. And I just think it's great that we're teaching our kids to give back. So I just wanted to share that.
Okay. I was able to to attend 2 meetings last week myself. I was able to join the Wilson PTO, who we're hearing from Mr. Malanga about the plans and the excitement level in the school for getting more of the kids in for instruction. And he talked about the installation of plexiglass and the discussion of, figuring out who goes in which door and when and that sort of thing. So he, I think, had not been able to join in the previous meeting when Rob had been in attendance. Rob couldn't join last week, but asked me to fill in. And I got the quick one. Sorry, you missed that one, Rob. I'm sure they'll prefer to have you back next time. But it was nice to be able to see the current members. They elected their new slate of officers for next year. Really ready to go and excited to do whatever they can to help the school. And so it was just kind of nice. My kids went to Wilson. I was involved in the PTO at Wilson way, way, way back in the day. So it was kind of a nice flashback for me, but obviously with new people and new ideas, which is always great. And Friday, I was able to join the high school PTSO. So almost the other end of the spectrum in terms of age of children. And they had a number of discussions. It's interesting to see how different it is because they are able to have students and teachers participate more fully in their meetings. They're able to kind of chime in remote, the way we're doing now. They're able to attend for like 10 minutes at a time to talk about what's happening in the counseling department, for instance, or to talk about what's happening with student government and the activities that the students themselves are involved in. And we had a student able to join as well, which is great. So he was able to give kind of a report from the field about how things are in the high school, again, with more students joining and things feeling a little more normal. So that was good. The PTSO has lots of plans about honoring graduating seniors, have some ideas up their sleeves, which I won't give away because there's some surprises there. But they are also very committed to helping and doing what they can to help ease the re-entry of students who've been away remote for a lot of the year and who may be coming back next year. They have made strong cases for where they hope to see more services at the high school, and they're, by working cooperatively with the counseling department, they meet with them now and have a better understanding, I think, of how things work at the school. Unfortunately, Mary Esfendis wasn't able to join us at that meeting, but she's typically at each one that I've been in attendance on. So that was pretty helpful and a good contrast to the Wilson one. Any other liaison reports? No. Okay. All right. Then now is the second time in the meeting when we recognize the public for comments. Brian will open the Q&A portal again. If you're on via WebEx, or you can do the *3 to raise your hand if you have called in. If you could type in your name and address. Brian will unmute you. I need you to please also state your name and address again verbally, because the Q&A portion isn't part of the recording of the meeting, but your audio comments will be. Okay.
Okay, we have Rob Bonaccio. Rob, I'll unmute you. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Couple different things to hit on. First,
Rob, again, can you please state your name and address for the official record?
I'm sorry, you're right. Rob Bonaccio, 528 Forest Avenue here in Westfield. Thanks for the reminder. Couple different things to bring up today. First, I noted Mrs. Dibble's retiring, and I've had the pleasure of both my girls having had Mrs. Dibble in Franklin School, and I can't tell you just how special a teacher she is. I think you all know that. It's a big regret to see that she won't she won't be there for my son to rise to second grade. But I got to tell you, if you want to know what a teacher really is and see a model of what that ought to be, she is it. And I'd like to spend all 3 minutes on her, frankly, but I couldn't let her retirement pass up without complimenting her. My kids still talk about her as just a fantastic teacher. A couple of other things to bring up. We've been talking over the last couple of meetings about return to school and getting our kids back in the classroom a bit more. I had asked if we could provide, and other parents as well, had asked for more information regarding the documents and the data that supported the decision making on timing and when to reopen, especially minutes and records of this reopening team that we have. And while I'm happy to see us starting to catch up to where many other districts are, I'm concerned we're going to plateau here. Bayonne we can add now to the list of districts that have figured out lunch and are going to be going to a more full-time schedule in May. I've been checking the website. I don't see these minutes or records. I don't see plans or projections for taking the next step. And I don't see the documents that were used to start the instructions, and I'd like to request those again. The last thing, again, a couple different points. I reviewed the curriculum that was out there, and the history courses in particular. I'm a history buff. I noticed in the descriptions of the history, they seem to be somewhat singular in perspective. We're teaching history and we're doing it around a centralized theme. I'm a little concerned that as I read some of the descriptions that we're trying to shoehorn history into an ideology. And I think the beauty of history is that it gives you perspective. It isn't taught from a single perspective. So I'd ask as we look at that curriculum for second reading that we take a look at that, again, and make sure that we're giving the students a base to analyze facts and think critically, as
30
opposed
seconds.
to as opposed to limiting them to a singular perspective. That's it. Thank you.
Next, we have Jerry Gleason. Jerry, I'll unmute you now. Again, you have 3 minutes. Please state your name and address.
Brian, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Gerald Gleason, 418 Alden Avenue. Really two comments, following up a little bit on what Mr. Bonaccio had said. Obviously there's been a lot of energy put behind much of the reopening and getting the kids back to school. I think, again, there's just a need and a desire to get some greater transparency related to some of the restart committee and some of the data and elements that they're looking at. I think we've talked about that over the last couple of board meetings. I think there was some commitments to provide some additional material, and I've been able unless I haven't been directed to it appropriately, to be able to get access to some of that information. That would be number one. I think the second point too, again, is timing. Related to if we're going to get information related to full school days. Again, it continues to be that there are other school districts that are moving to full school days, which include lunch. Many of them that are still under the advisement of the Westfield members of the Westfield Board of Health, which have provided guidance. We've seemed to take a more conservative approach compared to others that have taken a more full-blown approach. So again, at some point, are we going to get, from a timing perspective, some information related to, are we going to be going back full time for the year, or is this just going to play out? So I think again, there's some information that is requested there. And then the final point is, again, in terms of accelerating that pace, I did cut out on the finance part, and I apologize if I missed it, but there seems to be a lot of federal funding, both from two areas, one from the initial Cures Act that was passed last year, and then the most recent COVID relief bill for schools to reopen. I didn't hear mentions, and again, I may have missed it, and I apologize if I did when I cut out, related to the impact of forecast for our school budget over the next couple of years. And will we be able to access any of those funds to help accelerate the pace of reopenings? Thank you.
Just really quickly, I think Dana did say that we don't know yet the amount of funds that we'll be receiving from this latest round of the American Recovery Plan, I think it's called. So yeah, we're waiting to hear what we'll get.
Yeah, actually, the state's just opening up the grant applications for the December stimulus money. The money that was just allocated hasn't even made it to the states yet, let alone applications for district level distributions. It'll be several months before we have any idea what that money's going to look like and what the strings that will be attached to it.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? And maybe Dana can assist. Because it sounds like he's asking, do we have to apply for those federal funds, or do they come to us based on laws, policies, criteria? But how do we access those federal funds, and are they separate than the state funds? Or are they going through the state effectively, and then we get them?
They do go through the state. They're separate from state funds. They do go through the state. We are given an allocation, but we do have to submit an application. So the allocation came to us yesterday for the December funds, as Brendan stated, with the guidelines as to how we need to spend it. There's very strict guidelines as to what we can spend it on. We have to submit that application by May 14th. So we're working on that now. And then once they approve it, we can start spending it.
Is anyone else waiting, Brian?
No, I don't see anyone else. Okay, we have Kelly Hampman. Kelly, just give me a second and I'll unmute you. Okay, Kelly, you're unmuted again. Please state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Sure, thank you. Kelly Hantman, 635 Radley Road, Westfield. My question is, so in listening to the budget, which it was great, the presentation was really helpful and really interesting to see. In what other ways do we bring money in for maybe the gaps or anything we want to do beyond in terms of like teaching, pedagogy, professional development? Do we write for grants? I know the Westfield Ed Fund helped with the Racial Diversity Initiative this year, which is amazing. We hope to continue to support the board and be part of the team. That's really important to us. And, you know, we're growing and hopefully we can continue to grow and be part of more of that growth and development here in Westfield. But I would just love to hear of like other creative ways that we can bring in money and maybe even how community members can help or how the board, and the superintendent, take care of that.
Well, just real quickly, I would say that we are fortunate that we do live in a very a generous community. I know there are a lot of organizations that help support various interests. We have the Westfield Coalition for the Arts. As you said, the Westfield Ed Fund has been tremendous. And there are various sports leagues and the boosters in Westfield that also help support athletic endeavors where they can. And that's been helpful as well. We've had members of the community who have grant writing skills, which are helpful, but certainly when our teachers become aware of opportunities, we know that they have applied in the past and we've been able to receive grants through various programs that they become aware of. So we would definitely welcome the community if you hear of programs that you think might fit, or if you have that sort of skill set to help us apply. I think that would be helpful.
Amy, we have
another
question from Kathleen Russo.
Can I
I'm
just
sorry,
follow
Sarah,
up?
go
I'm sorry. No, it's okay. I just want to follow up on Ms. Hantman's comment. Dana, would you mind explaining to the public what the enterprise fund is? Because that directly relates to her question. And in terms of the flexibility that can create for us to spend beyond our operations budget, which is limited by the 2% cap.
Well, yeah, it's not really grants, but for something like the RAP program where we're able to get revenue from people by charging for that extra program that we offer at the either in the morning or the afternoon, depending on when the student attends kindergarten. We charge tuition for that, which not only covers the cost of the teachers and the staff and the supplies needed for the program, it also helps to defray some of the costs for the school. So a portion of the principal, a portion of the secretary, a portion of the nurse, the custodian, portion of their costs are charged to that program. So we do bring in revenue for some programs like that, but we're very restricted on how much of that we can actually do because we're not a money-making institution. So we have to be careful about it. We can only cover our costs.
I'm sorry, I might have listed the wrong fund. Maybe I'm talking about the special revenue.
You're talking about special revenue, right? Special revenue.
Yes, sorry, that's what I meant, yes.
Special revenue is where all of our grants are accounted for. And so we do have a number of state grants, not the state aid that we talked about earlier, but state grants that are given to us for a particular purpose. We also have federal grants that are given to us for a particular purpose. They're all accounted for in there. And then we have a number of local grants, which Amy was talking about, which are through the PTOs or through the Ed Fund or the Coalition of the Arts, where we get donations. And certainly, we try to go out and ask for grants as much as we can from when we see it, if it's federal money or state money. Westfield is usually not in the socioeconomic group that qualifies for a lot of the bigger grants that are given out by the federal government, but we do apply if we think that we have a shot for it, for sure. But yeah, all of those funds are accounted for at a different part of the budget called the Special Revenue Fund. And that's because we don't really have flexibility on how we can spend that money. We have to spend it in accordance with the grants.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Brian, we have another comment?
Yes, we have Kathleen Russo. Kathleen, I'll unmute you and you can ask your question. Go right ahead. Again, please state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Great, thank you, Brian. I'm Kathleen Russo. I live at 721 Standish Avenue. And my question really is more focusing on the future. Do we have an established committee or plan to assemble a committee that will assess the students upon the full-time return to school to determine or identify gaps or loss of skill? I have 3 sons at home in Franklin and two in middle school. And my concern is, while they seem to be completing their work and doing what they're supposed to do, my concern is the loss of skill or the loss of that in-person learning with teachers. And if it's not, I'd like to suggest a committee to reassess our kids, because upon their return, I think we not only have to move forward, but we have to determine what was missed or what may have been lost. So I'm just looking forward to hearing that. I've also worked in special ed for 25 years. I'd be happy to volunteer to be on a committee as a parent representative for that. And I just think, we've struggled through the past year, and I really think we need to focus on the future as well. And I feel like, the past year may have been somewhat of a loss for most of our children. And I look forward to seeing plans for that committee in the future. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for that comment. And I'm just going to take a second to say that that actually all the times that our curriculum committee has met, we have been discussing it and hearing from our Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum, Paul Pinero. He's spoken at a few of our meetings, but we're looking to work together, I guess, a presentation that we can post somewhere so that it's not just going back and listening to audio of us discussing it. The teachers have been working on assessment methods throughout the year. They've been talking about it all year long, and I know that this is an important month for coming up with presentable results. Is that correct to say, Paul, for the state?
Yeah, in fact, we met today for a couple hours. We've spent a great deal of time. We've assessed all year, so we're constantly assessing. So it might not be in the context of, say, something that the standardized tests you see or something from a vendor, but teachers are constantly assessing through unit tests in math, for example, writing samples. So we have a good sense anecdotally of where the students are at, but I agree with the speaker that we'd like to see something that's more formalized. So the state is requiring we do that since we're not having a standardized test. So we've had to look at all of the different metrics, all of the different data that we do have throughout the year. And we're coming up with some good ways to provide that to the state. But at the same time, we want to have something to, like, the state isn't asking for as much as what we're asking from ourselves, which is to be able to pinpoint the different skill sets that might need extra help. And so we've already known that and seen that, and we're doing ongoing professional development, or better yet, maybe articulation with teachers about, like, say, math fact fluency, which is something, Amy, that you wrote in your notes from the last meeting, or, aspects of writing, for example. So yeah, we spent, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say combined 100 hours or more. And I have the supervisors doing a lot of analysis and grade distributions by using the grades that are in the system. So yeah, I think we're scheduling for April to have something that is precise and something that the community would be able to get a level of confidence that we're having, that we know where the students are at and we'll know what we have to do. Now, all that being said, we've already started fashioning the kinds of interventions that we are going to do and what we can do. When teachers come back in September, they will have used the data from this year as pre-assessment so that they can hit the ground running, knowing whatever deficiencies show up. So it's absolutely correct that we need to be doing that. So we have been, but we haven't presented that to the community, so they don't know that yet. But we will, and I'm looking forward to it, and it's coming together well. The real challenging thing has been what the state is asking for, and it's a lot to just pop on top of everything else that's going on. But we have the right people, including Brian's information tech manager in his office, he's a whiz with some spreadsheets and pivot tables and things. So we'll have a good sense of where students are at, and we'll be able to present to the community what data is suggesting that. So thank you for the question.
Thank you. Thanks for chiming in. Brian, any other comments?
I have one comment from Lisa Davis. She has a question. Lisa, I'll unmute you now if you'd like to ask your question. You're unmuted.
Hi, this is Lisa Davis. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Can you state your name? I'm sorry, well, you already stated your name. Can you state your address for the official record?
Sure, 955 Minnesink Way. With
Thank you.
regards to the assessments, I was just wondering if Westfield is doing the Start Strong, and if so, when?
No. The Start Strong is an assessment that the state provides, sort of like a pre-assessment. And so we looked at that and even spoken with a lot of other districts, and we didn't think that was right for us.
Okay. All right, thanks.
I don't see any others at this time.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you. Dana, are we going back into private session at the end of this meeting? No?
I don't think so.
Okay.
We'll put that on the next agenda.
Okay. All right. All right then, some good comments to take with us as we travel to our next meeting, which is again April 6th. All right. In that case, I guess I would like a motion to adjourn. Can I have a second?
Second.
Great, thank you, Brendan. All right, everyone, stay healthy, be careful, enjoy the break. See you in April, and we'll see you all, you board members, for our private meeting on Monday. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.